It's not every day that a player can have a bond with a coach that turns into one that you would see similarly in a family. Frank Thompson, however, found it early, here in the town of Blacksburg, where he was raised.
What do you remember about the first time that you met Martin?
Yeah, so the first time I ever met Martin, I was 11 or 12 years old, and he was the head women's coach at Radford University, and he worked my dad's tennis camp. So he was one of the big coaches in the tennis camp, and I had a bunch of my buddies there, and that was probably my first introduction to Martin. And then obviously I've gotten to know him throughout the years, throughout his different roles.
What was it about him that you think made you guys have such a special bond?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with, the fact that I met him when I was 12, right? And I had various times with him where when he was at Radford, I worked, I played at age 12 with his women's team and got to know him through then. And then, he took me to a few tournaments when I was younger as well. So I think the history, I think that makes a huge part of it, of just pure amount of time spent together. And then it's the stuff, where you're not talking about tennis and, he met my first girlfriend and watched me go to this and that, and it kind of saw me grow up. So almost like a second father, if you will. So it just kind of changes things a bit.
Do you remember where you were, what you were doing when you had heard
About the news.
Yeah, absolutely. I had just woken up and I got this text from Paul Nexted, who's one of the sports psychologists here, and it read, let me see if I remember this correctly. I can't believe I'm blanking on exactly how it went, but it was, Frank, I heard the news. I'm so sorry. Please write me if you need anything. And in that moment, I knew that Martin had passed away. It was just crazy because, it didn't say Martin had passed away, but I just woke up that morning to that text and immediately knew that was what had happened. So I called my dad and said, hey, I got this interesting text, and, my dad, he couldn't say it on the phone. So he said, hey, he was with, Martin's son at the house, and he said, hey, Roger and I are coming to the house, some sad news we want to tell you. So right then I knew that he had passed away, which was sad, but.
On July 25th, 2023, Martin Sayer passed away. He was 36 years old. The Virginia Tech community mourned with Frank and the Thompson family over the loss of their coach, friend, and most importantly, someone who was a part of their family. Although the adjustment period has been difficult, there will be a strong desire to honor a man that meant so much to so many.
What are you going to do in your day-to-day, every day, as Frank Thompson personally, to make sure that you help people remember Martin's name?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big ones I'm a proponent about is, sometimes when someone passes away and they mean a lot to you, it's really difficult to talk about them, and so people sometimes will shy away from it. I'm really a proponent of, in the locker room, anything, I bring up his name a lot, and I get a lot of joy from that. But also, I think it's more than just that. It's how you live your life now. You can do one of two things. You can remember him sadly and remember the last little bit where he passed away and that whole process. But I choose to remember, how he lived his life and the things he taught me about how to be a man and how to treat people and, just how to help the next generation along, right? As a little 12-year-old when he was the coach at Radford, he let me join his practices, and I'll never forget that experience, right? It was awesome. And so I make sure that anytime I can, I help young people, be in situations where they might not even be ready for it, but just kind of as a way to live on his legacy, because he did that for me.
If you could say one thing to Martin right now, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a tough one. What would I say to Martin right now? I think I'd love to tell him that we have his son. I think his little son Roger is growing up and was growing up around the courts, and they've moved to Mooresville now. But I'd want him to know that like we have a ton of eyes on his son, and we'll make sure that he's gonna do well.
What do you think Martin's legacy will be remembered by?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you what the wider legacy is. Well, actually, I could. I attended the Radford Hall of Fame, so he was, just a little bit about him, he was an incredible player. He's the most decorated athlete, and I say that, decorated athlete in Radford's history. He lost 4 matches in his whole career, made NCAAs 4 times, and so he grew up in Hong Kong, and was, top 20 in the world, and went to Radford University. You're like, wait, what? Like, how did that happen? But I think that's a big part of his legacy is he's a very loyal guy. Mike Anderson was his coach at Radford, and he went over to Hong Kong to meet him. And from the moment they met, he had decided that he was going to be loyal to Radford and went to there. And then, when he was at Virginia Tech, is always defended my dad, always defended me, was loyal almost to a fault, right? Like he was the guy that, would always have your back, and you felt really confident that, when the lights were off and you weren't standing next to him, he was going to talk positive about you and always had your best interest at heart. So for me, his legacy, while obviously was a great player and coach and had an awesome career, it was more, I'd encompass who he was as a really loyal person, loyal to his family, loyal to Virginia Tech, loyal to Radford, loyal to all of his players. I'd say loyalty kind of puts it all together.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
That was good.
A man of the game, a man of loyalty, a man filled with passion and honor, a man that will never be forgotten.